In the quiet neighborhoods of Derby, England, no one imagined that inside a cramped council house on Victory Road, a father who demanded admiration, attention, and applause was cultivating something far darker than chaos. Behind his grin, behind his bluster, behind the way he spoke about his family, Mick Philpott was weaving a tragedy so unimaginable that even seasoned detectives would later admit the case broke something inside them. When investigators first stood before the charred remains of that home, when smoke still clung to the air and firefighters knelt on pavement as if stunned into prayer, they knew something was wrong. Something didn't match. Something felt staged, but even they never expected the truth to be as cruel as the flames that took 6 young children from their beds before dawn. Years earlier, long before national headlines, before documentaries and courtrooms and the press conference that made the world recoil, Mick Philpott's story began in whispers, quiet warnings, traumatized ex-partners, old police records gathering dust. The danger was always there, and yet, somehow, he kept slipping through the cracks. He was born in 1956 and grew into a man who believed people were possessions, who believed women were replaceable, who believed children existed to serve him. Those close to him said he demanded loyalty the way tyrants do, in absolute terms. To refuse him anything was to provoke the unpredictable storm behind his eyes. And when violence erupted, it erupted without pause, without conscience, without the slightest flicker of regret. The first girl who fell into his orbit was only 15. Kim Hill was still in school. Young, impressionable, flattered by attention she didn't yet understand was predatory. At first, Mick played the charming soldier, the protective boyfriend. He told her he'd take care of her, told her she was special. But his version of love was shaped by control, by fear, by the belief that she belonged to him. What followed wasn't love by any definition found in the world of healthy people. Mick's affection came with fists, with threats, with public humiliation. One night in a crowded pub, he struck her in the face with a pool cue so hard she collapsed. Blood soaked her shirt. Strangers watched but didn't interfere. They looked at Mick and looked away, as if fear somehow extended to them too. The abuse escalated the more she tried to hold her own identity. He broke her arm with a hammer. He fractured her kneecap. He shot her with a crossbow because he disapproved of her skirt. Yet when friends asked, she covered for him. When teachers noticed bruises, she lied. Kim was trapped in a cage built from terror and teenage loyalty. An impossible combination. But in the summer of 1978, she tried to reclaim her life. She wrote Mick a breakup letter and prayed that would be the end. Instead, Mick deserted the army, broke into her mother's home, and attacked her with such violence that emergency responders later said they had never seen a woman survive injuries like hers. 27 stab wounds, slashed abdomen, collapsed lungs, a punctured liver. Her mother stabbed 11 times. Trying to protect her, it was almost prophetic that Kim died twice on the way to hospital and was revived both times. It was as if the universe refused to let Mick Philpott's first major victim disappear quietly. He served barely 3 years. 3 years for a crime that could have ended 2 lives forever. 3 years to step back into society with no restrictions, no rehabilitation, and no deterrent. If the system had acted then, if anyone had seen the predator clearly, everything that followed might have been prevented. The 6 children sleeping upstairs years later might still be alive. But history doesn't grant what-ifs. It only leaves us with consequences. In 2000, he met 19-year-old Mary Duffy, a young mother escaping her own troubled past. Mick inserted himself into her life like a savior. She had never met a man who acted so decisive, so confident, so willing to take control. She didn't realize that control was the danger. Not long after, Mick brought another girl into the home, Lisa Willis, 16 years old, a single mother, and desperate for belonging. Mick's house became a twisted version of a family. 2 women sharing the same partner, sharing the responsibilities, sharing the exhaustion of raising children in a cramped space, while Mick remained unemployed, sitting in the center of the chaos like a king on a throne. People who visited the home later said his authority felt absolute. The way he spoke, the way the women stayed silent until he finished a sentence, the way the children watched him before answering questions, as if seeking permission. He didn't just demand loyalty. He curated it. With a total of 17 children across multiple relationships, Mick was proud of what he called his family empire and made sure the world knew it. He wasn't working, but he was earning benefits, housing support, payments that grew with every new baby. Behind his rhetoric about loving family, there was always the same underlying motive. More children meant more money. He started appearing on television, talk shows, documentaries. He played up the role of the misunderstood father with an unconventional home life. He asked for a bigger house. He said he needed help, needed more support, needed sympathy. Watching those clips today is chilling. The arrogance, the charm, the defensiveness, the way his temper flared the moment he was challenged, the way he spoke about women as if they were interchangeable, the way he mocked the idea that he should work. By 2007, he was claiming he supported his family through unpaid labor at home, overseeing the household, managing the children, coordinating everything. But behind closed doors, he contributed very little. Everything, the house, the groceries, the clothing, came from the effort of the two women who worked long shifts while he stayed home. People still defended him, still believed him, still saw him as a flawed but loving father, until one woman finally decided to leave. In February 2012, after years trapped in Mick's orbit, Lisa left quietly with her 5 children. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't take clothes. She simply said she was taking the kids swimming and didn't return. For the first time in decades, someone in Mick's immediate circle had broken free, and Mick couldn't handle it. To lose control was to lose identity. To lose identity was to lose everything. For weeks he seethed. For months he obsessed. Custody battles began. Accusations flew. And, inside the cramped house on Victory Road, an idea began to form. An idea that would become one of the most horrifying cases in modern British history. He believed that if Lisa could be framed as dangerous, as unstable, as vengeful, he could win his children back. But framing someone required more than lies. It required a crisis. It required a tragedy. It required a fire. Before we continue deeper into this unbearable night on Victory Road, you're watching this on Unsolved True Crimes, make sure you're subscribed. Our documentaries often reach communities that want their stories told with honesty, care, and detail, and your subscription helps us continue bringing these cases into the light. Now, let's return to the night where everything changed. In the spring of 2012, Mick enlisted 2 people for his plan, his wife Mary Reed and a family friend, Paul Mosley. The goal was simple in his mind: set a small fire at the front of the house, pretend to discover it, perform a dramatic rescue, and blame Lisa for an attempted attack. He planned to be the hero, but fire is not a tool that follows rules. It does not obey plans. It does not understand theatrics. What happened next was not the minor blaze Mick imagined. It was a furnace, a flashover, a nightmare that devoured everything in minutes. At 4 a.m. on May 11, 2012, while 6 children slept upstairs, Mick's plan ignited, literally and metaphorically. And once the flames took hold, there was no stopping them. The fire spread faster than anyone expected, faster than the perpetrators understood, faster than the screams could even begin. Inside those smoke-filled rooms were Jade, John, Jack, Jesse, Jaden, and 13-year-old Dwayne, children whose futures had barely begun. Children who should have been safe in their beds. Children who trusted the man who orchestrated the inferno. And the moment that petrol caught flame, the moment heat roared up the stairs, the moment smoke filled their lungs, everything became irreversible. And yet Mick still performed his role. The anguished father, the desperate rescuer, the man screaming on the pavement as firefighters fought an unwinnable battle. But behind the scenes, investigators were already noticing the details, the inconsistencies, the behavior, the strange choices Mick made as the night unfolded. This was not an accident. This was not grief. This was something far more calculated, something far more disturbing. And it was only the beginning. When firefighters finally forced their way into the burning house on Victory Road, the smoke was so thick it behaved like a physical barrier, pushing back, swallowing everything, choking out visibility even through protective gear. Crews described the inside of that home as a furnace with stairs. Temperatures in the bedrooms had become catastrophic long before the front door even opened. They moved through hallways that were barely hallways anymore. Just heat. Just collapse. Just silence where children should have been crying for help. One firefighter later said the stillness was the worst part. That moment when you expect the sound of life, but find only the aftermath of chaos. By dawn, the street was lined with neighbors staring at the scorched shell of the house, where 6 children had slept only hours earlier. Some whispered prayers, others covered their mouths, but most simply stared ahead in shock. A sense of wrongness radiated from the scene. Not just tragedy, wrongness. That faint instinct humans get when something doesn't align with nature. As emergency crews worked, Mick Philpott emerged as the face of grief, wailing, collapsing to his knees, pounding the ground with his fists, crying out that his babies were gone. He shouted their names into the air as if the sound might rewind time. He wrapped his arms around officers, sobbing into their uniforms. On camera, it was devastating. In person, it felt manufactured. Some of the first responders recalled looking at him and feeling an unease they couldn't place. They didn't know why. Not then. But trauma has a strange way of magnifying falsehood. Real grief has a rhythm, a vulnerability, a rawness that cannot be staged. What they saw that morning was performance, and something underneath it, something cold. In the days that followed, the country mourned 6 young lives. Candlelit vigils filled the street outside the charred home. Strangers sent toys, flowers, handwritten cards. The television blurred with images of small faces: Jade, John, Jack, Jesse, Jaden, and Dwayne, displayed beside flames they never escaped. Reporters described them as smiling, bright, affectionate, full of personality. Little did the world know that behind the tragedy, behind the sympathy, behind the grief, the father at the center had orchestrated everything. But detectives were already seeing what the public could not. Fire investigators, experienced in reading burn patterns like books, saw immediately that the fire started at the base of the front door, not from faulty wiring, not from an appliance, not from accident. Someone had poured petrol through the letterbox and lit it. And the spread was deliberate, controlled, intentional. Whoever started the fire knew exactly where it would do the most damage. When the forensic team searched the area, they found something even more telling: a plastic petrol container discarded near the property. A glove, fragments of melted material that matched accelerants. None of it fit the idea of random violence, and certainly not the idea of a grieving father blindsided by devastation. But even that wasn't the strongest clue. It was Mick's behavior. In the days following the fire, while his children lay in the morgue, Mick seemed energized by the attention. He visited the disaster site frequently, moving through crowds like an actor adjusting a spotlight. Journalists who spoke to him described a man who didn't just want to talk. He enjoyed it. He relished it. He treated the press as an audience rather than a burden. One mortuary worker would later say he was shocked when Mick arrived to view the bodies of his children and began horsing around in the hallway, joking with people, even putting an officer in a playful headlock. The worker said it was as if Mick had forgotten where he was, as if the gravity of what happened simply didn't exist for him. And then came the press conference. The moment that changed everything. Mareed sat beside Mick, her hands clasped tightly, her face blotchy and drained. Mick did the talking. Dramatic pauses, shaking voice, lip quivering at all the right times. He thanked the community, thanked emergency responders, thanked hospital staff, thanked everyone he could think of. Then he announced that Dwayne's organs had been donated. People watching cried. People watching believed him. But detectives watching saw something else. They saw a man with no genuine devastation. A man who was trying too hard. A man who appeared more focused on his own image than the children he had lost. And then, live on camera, he slipped. For a fraction of a second, his face shifted. A smugness flickered, then disappeared. A micro-expression no grieving father should possess. It was the crack investigators needed. Behind the scenes, police had already placed covert listening devices inside Mick and Mareed's hotel room, and inside a police vehicle used to transport them. The hope was to capture something. Anything that would confirm suspicions. What they captured was a confessional unraveling. In the privacy Mick believed he had, he talked freely. He admitted things no innocent parent would say. He scolded Mareed for getting details wrong. He rehearsed versions of events. He panicked about fingerprints. He whispered things that made officers' stomachs twist. But worst of all were the moments when he dropped the facade completely and spoke like a man unmoved by the deaths of 6 children, On one recording, Mick said, "It's my fault we lost them. My fault we lost the lot." Not spoken with sorrow. Not spoken with guilt, but in the tone of a man whose plan had backfired. In another, he reminded Merid not to deviate from their story. "You sticking with the plan?" he asked her. "You better." The most jarring, though, was the session where investigators listened in horror as, hours after the children's deaths, Mick encouraged Merid to engage in sexual acts with their accomplice, Paul Mosley. At first, officers thought they were mishearing. But no, the audio was painfully clear. Mick had arranged it. Mick orchestrated it. And during it, Mick's voice could be heard saying, "Good girl. You didn't want to do it. Proud of you." The investigators sitting behind those speakers, their hands went cold. These were not the actions of a grieving father. These were the actions of a man who saw the world as pieces he moved, controlled, manipulated. And now, even with his children gone, his mind was shifting to self-preservation, to tightening the story, to burying the evidence. But evidence was surfacing everywhere. Petrol on Mick's clothing. Petrol on Merid's nightdress. Petrol on Mosley's jeans. A ladder placed at the back of the house, positioned for a future rescue attempt that never happened. It was part of Mick's plan. Set the fire, slip outside, make a heroic climb, pull the children from smoke-filled rooms, emerge as a savior. He wanted applause. He wanted headlines. He wanted to walk into that custody hearing the next morning as the brave father who saved everyone, and frame Lisa as the monster. But fire doesn't negotiate, and once the blaze exploded through those hallways, the house became a trap mainly designed by the man standing outside performing grief. By late May, police charged Mick and Merid with murder. 2 days later, Mosley was charged as well. The nation watched as the couple who appeared hand in hand at a press conference were now escorted to court in handcuffs. And when their trial began, the courtroom felt heavy, not only with sorrow, but with the disturbing reality of what the prosecution laid out. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a moment of rage. It was a plan, a coordinated scheme born from greed, manipulation, entitlement, and a desire for control. In court, prosecutors explained that the fire was meant to be small, a scare tactic. But Mick, blinded by arrogance, never accounted for the lethal speed of a petrol-fueled blaze or the sleeping children upstairs. The room fell silent when jurors were told the temperatures inside the bedrooms exceeded 500 degrees Celsius. There was no chance, no air, no breath, no moment to wake up and run. One detective said testifying felt like reliving a nightmare. Witnesses described Mick's behavior in the aftermath, not grief, but showmanship. Not sorrow, but performance. One nurse even recounted how he flirted with her while his children were still on life support. She thought it was shock at first. Then she realized it wasn't shock at all. It was normal for him. While the jury listened to forensic details, the viral clips of Mick's earlier television appearances resurfaced on the news. Him bragging about his family, him demanding a bigger house, him calling himself a victim of society, him threatening a talk show host, him announcing publicly that he'd had a vasectomy, an easily disproven claim. To most viewers, the arrogance felt different now, more sinister, more prophetic. Lisa Willis testified, telling the court how she had to flee with her children because Mick's control had become unbearable. She described the manipulation, the threats, the fear of retaliation. When she cried on the stand, the courtroom seemed to absorb her pain. She had survived something monstrous, and she had escaped just in time. When the prosecution played the covert recordings, the jury listened with stunned expressions. Then they listened again. Officers later said you could hear jurors breathe differently when Mick's voice filled the room. A voice of control. A voice of entitlement. A voice utterly devoid of soul. The defense tried to argue it was all a misunderstanding. That Mick didn't intend harm. That the fire had simply burned faster than expected. That no one predicted tragedy. That it was an accident. But intent does not require wanting death. Intent requires choosing danger, and Mick chose the most dangerous weapon of all, fire. In April 2013, after weeks of testimony, tears, evidence, and haunting retellings of the children's final moments, the verdict was delivered. Guilty. Mick Philpott, mastermind of the arson that killed 6 innocent children, was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 15 years. Mick Philpott, who helped plan the fire and lied repeatedly to officers, received 17 years. Paul Mosley received 17 years as well. The courtroom was silent when the sentences were read. Not because the punishments were harsh, many believed they weren't, but because justice, even at its strongest, felt too small for what had been taken. The judge said something that still lingers in case files today. "Your children died because you put your husband first." Those words pierced the air like a final truth, a truth the world had been waiting to hear. Years passed. Grief did not fade for Derby. The small coffins, the community vigils, the memories of children lost. It became a permanent wound. In 2020, Mick was released on license after serving half her sentence. She was given a new identity. She was escorted by a convoy described by witnesses as celebrity-like, not the transport of a woman whose actions ended 6 young lives. A year later, Mosley was released, returned to prison for violations, then released again. Life moved on for them. Hesitantly, quietly, away from public anger. But Mick remains in prison, aging behind bars, still serving the minimum term before a parole request can even be considered. For many, any future release would be unthinkable. For many, 15 years is an insult to the children whose lives were extinguished. But the legal system works within boundaries, and those boundaries don't always reflect the magnitude of the loss. And what of the children? Their names remain carved into the heart of Derby. Jade, John, Jack, Jesse, Jaden, Dwayne. 6 young souls who should have grown up, gone to school, argued over toys, spilled juice on the carpet, climbed fences, called for bedtime stories, and lived long, bright, ordinary lives. 6 children who trusted the wrong person. A person who should have been their shield, but instead became their destroyer. Every detective who worked on the case, every firefighter who entered that house, every paramedic who stood outside praying for a miracle has spoken about how this tragedy changed them. Some call it the hardest case of their careers. Some say they still dream about the silence inside that upstairs hallway. Some say they wish they could unhear the recordings, unknow the truth, unsee the aftermath. But the truth remains. Not every parent deserves a child. And sometimes, the greatest danger comes from those who claim to love us most. If you found this story chilling, consider subscribing to this channel, Unsolved True Crimes, UTC. We tell these stories to honor those who can no longer speak, to remember them, and to ensure their truth is never lost. Thank you for watching, and stay safe.